You've written the book, Master Your Mindset, kind of really embrace that. Like, as you've talked about already, it's like, what goes through our mind, how we actually intentionally, think and act determines so much in our life. Explain how that started for you and how you've really seen that cascade over time.
Yeah, we kind of talked about pre-record being a college athlete, being in high school, being an athlete for my whole life. I just, love competing, love playing, love the aspect of sports, being a teammate and winning and that type of stuff. But as you get higher up in your career, you notice that it's not just about talent, about skills. So at Washington State, playing two sports, I wanted to win, I wanted to do well, but I had this anxiety about like not failing. And I got my self-worth on the outcomes, so every performance was a matter of life and death. So, if I wasn't getting the type of the results I wanted in baseball, with other sports I played, and even as a kid, is I would just work harder, I would try harder, I'd lift more weights. In football, I'd catch more passes, I'd run more routes, but, working harder doesn't guarantee you will do better. So I just kind of like hid anxiety, struggled with a lot of things, wouldn't talk about it. And as, male athletes, we're kind of taught to be tough and to not ask for help and all that type of stuff. And then in business and sales after graduate school, selling to doctors and hospitals and that type of a role. It's like sports is like sales. There's an outcome, there's a result, there's pressure. When you do well, you get praised. When you don't do well, your number on that list of, who's in the top 10 or who's on the stage, who's going on trips, like you get your work tied to the outcome. And like 7-8 years ago, I hit a point where I was just completely exhausted. I was going backwards. I just wasn't growing, wasn't advancing. I was crushing Netflix. I was watching movies as my escape. It wasn't like drugs and alcohol, man. I would escape by watching movies. But I had a mindset coach who really taught sales excellence, but he really talked more about the power of the mind. So when I got a hold of this information, like my mind was blown, Tyler, because I was like, man, he taught me this phrasing, sales psychology beats sales strategy. And he's like, there's these books on sales, which I know you do some of that. But really the book you should be reading is like understanding self, the power of self-talk, self-awareness, mindfulness, how to, form great habits, knowing your why and just like this power of your inner voice and what it does. So once I got a hold of this information, just like, I'm a student, I'm very curious. If I see something working, I'm an athlete, I'm going to get after it and apply it. So I just saw transformation. I set sales records. I was healthier. I was happier. I'm a father of 5 now. I think at that time we had like 2 kids. So I was just a better father, better husband. And I got kind of upset in that moment. I was like, why don't more people have access to these tools? Like this stuff is not taught in schools. Most onboarding in businesses, thank God I had a sales coach that taught me about the power of the mind. So what I started doing is I got promoted to like this national sales trainer. I had a lot of success. Like, what are you doing in Seattle? I was like, well, it's like 95% mindset. It's not like how to prospect, probe, and advance the call and close. It's like self-awareness, having empathy, having great energy, how to visualize all these different things, gratitude, power of service. So when I would travel the country, I would teach people, how do you talk to yourself? What's the proper way to set goals? Now, actually, it's the process, not the outcome. It's having what I call MIT's most important task, identify your daily habits. Let's not waste a moment, not waste a day. And then I started blogging about this stuff, man, started writing books. And so for the last 2 years, I'm proud to say I've been doing this full time.
That's awesome. Well, I've kind of grasped a hold of this going from my own experience, working for a corporation to have my own business and going through those personal struggles of trying to figure it out. I had to learn the hard way. It's not the tangible skills that I had. It was all of the people skills, the personal skills, which a lot of that for me was all rooted in insecurity. And you kind of tapped into that a little bit, whether it's where does that anxiety come from? And I don't know if you want to share where you feel like that came from. Have you identified where was the root of that anxiety that really was a overarching insecurity?
Yeah. So if you look at the word mindset, it is a conditioned set of beliefs that drive behavior. So it's kind of 2 dials. It's beliefs in yourself. And really those beliefs are shaped by, I like to say, trauma, drama, daddy, and mama.
Okay.
So the brain is conditioned for its survival. So if you've had an event that was traumatic, your cells are going to store them and remember them. Your brain's going to remember them. So there's going to be alert, alert, danger, danger. So you want to avoid those things. And for me, I had this fear like of not being perfect. I think we all, I have great parents, but my dad was that dad in the stands, like the loudest dad in the stands. And he coached me in sports too. So like I would just hear the noise and kind of think my worth is tied to how I play. So I need to not fail in order to not hear those things. And he obviously he loved me, he'd do anything, but he was just that kind of loud dad. I think that was kind of part of it. And I just want to please people. I want to do well. I want to achieve. So like I would just spend most of my time exhausting, thinking what other people think. But the reality is they're thinking about themselves, not me. And what manifested in this fear of failure was I used to have a slight stutter. I actually still daily work through being fluent. So I remember in 6th grade, I had to read out loud. I got stuck on a word, and that warm blanket of shame came over me. And that fear came through, and I heard kind of some of my peers laugh. And so that trigger, don't feel those things again. So don't stutter again. So when you avoid things and you don't practice as you get worse. So by saying don't stutter, your brain's a magnet, which you resist, persist, thoughts become things, energy flows where focus goes. So by avoiding things, you attract things. So my fluency actually got worse as I got older, which is kind of strange. But I remember when I was 26, 27 years old, like even, as an adult, I had sometimes a hard time answering the phone, going through a drive-through, even ordering food, this like internal state change of like shallow breathing, thinking, don't stutter, don't screw up. What are people thinking? I just wasn't present. So doing therapy, speech therapy, and then I did Toastmasters for 3 years, like practicing presenting in public. And I wasn't very good at first, but, just having that empathy of like, I kind of understand what people feel, because I felt anxiety for a long time. I didn't talk about it. I would try to hide it. And just understanding just the power of words, Tyler, the power of language. So I've been on this thing the last few months just describing how we think in 4 dimensions. We think in 4 dimensions. The first dimension are words. The words that we say influence the next level, which are pictures. And then the third dimension is these words influence pictures. These pictures influence our emotional state. And our emotional state influences the 4th dimension, which is our beliefs. But Tyler, what's interesting is that, our actions and behaviors and beliefs are not based off of truth. They're based off our perception of that truth. And that truth oftentimes isn't even real. So a simple way to reframe your thoughts is just to observe them. Are there some common negative thoughts, some common negative themes? And looking at the brain science, research shows that 80% of human thoughts are negative and 95% of human thoughts are reoccurring. So we have this junk drawer in our head of like useless information that we cannot use. And when we try to execute in these moments, we go to that junk drawer and we can't find what we're trying to look for. So if we can the question I like to have people ask themselves is this true, said by who? Is this thought even true? Like, where did it come from? Is it this internal Judge Judy, our past mistakes and, worrying about what bad things can happen? Is this even true? It's probably not true. But who said that? One random person? Or when you were 8 years old, when you're like some other 8-year-old on the recess, who gives them the power to label you,
Well, it makes me think of 2 things. One of my early, business training, sales training, corporate training. And I remember the guy, he writes up on this big, poster board, MSU. And I'm thinking Michigan State, like I'm from the Midwest, like what? And he goes, no, make stuff up. I had a pastor friend share this. He goes, stop reading between the lines. Nothing's written there. And yet that's what our brain does all the time. As you said, these pattern of reoccurring thoughts, on the podcast, we just had Dr. Caroline Leaf talks all about this stuff. What I love and what I think is really, really cool is how, in kind of this segment here where, a couple podcasts, we're all talking about the same thing. And it's kind of this mindset window of, having Caroline Leaf, where we're going to be talking about the book, Think Again, Adam Grant. We have, had Mike Nielsen talking about mindset at Gonzaga and, talking to other people. And it's all these same things. And what's cool to me and how it's so powerful is when what you're saying matches up exactly what Caroline's saying, which is exactly, matching up with what, Mike and what he's experienced at Gonzaga and everything they've researched to Carol, Dweck and mindset. And so all this stuff comes together. That tells me that it's not random. And yet, as you mentioned, how many, corporate trainers, how many, if we're talking about leadership, if we're talking about sales, we're talking about, human performance, how many people are saying, hey, don't worry about the arbitrary skills. You got to have that. But to get to the next level in anything, it's all about your mindset. There aren't many, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I'll just give the audience, I want to be a coach and not just throw out theory at you. So
yeah.
A simple drill we can do is, I call it MAP. So M is to just monitor your thoughts. There's a great quote from Dr. Susan David. She says, who's in charge, the thinker or the thought?
Good.
I'm of the belief that we have the power of a free will. So really, in the end, we have the power to observe. That's why mindfulness and self-awareness is such a powerful, proven back by science, a powerful mental drill that we can do daily to just sit back and observe without judgment and just, again, challenge. It's not even true because, the fact is, because the brain's wired to be negative, that first thought most likely will be negative. But if your mind is trained, that second, third, fourth thought doesn't have to be. So M is to monitor. A, so it's called a mental map. M is monitor. Just be aware. And A is to audit. So when your internal critic pops up, if you can label that, that's my critic. That's my ancient lizard brain. That's really not the real me. It's trying to hold me back from not failing, not looking stupid, Mm-hmm. And P is the program. So one of my favorite mental skills to teach any age is the power of self-talk. Is how you speak to yourself. What you say to yourself has 10 times the power versus what other people say to you. Your inner voice controls everything. It's the first start of this thought cascade: words, pictures, emotions, and beliefs. It starts with a word. It starts with, do you ever sit back and think about your thoughts, observe your thoughts, analyze? So if we can have a better self-talk game plan where we have in our back pocket, hey, when have I had success before? Just what are some moments of achievement that I'm proud of? Because what we want to do, the brain's wired for negativity, it's going to replay all your failures and say you're not worthy of this. So listeners, before a sales call or a Zoom meeting for your company, or as a parent, you're around other parents and you have to speak up, are you giving yourself reasons why you're not worthy or why you're going to fail or why they're going to judge you? Well, what if we flipped it and talk yourself into excellence? And say, well, actually, I've done some hard things before. And then to be credible with your self-talk too is just what type of training have I done to earn the right to be here? Let's just treat this the same. Every moment is a chance to be present and to experience and to grow. And then the last one I have people do is to have what I like to call anchor statements. Like an anchor anchors a boat out in the water. If there's wind, if there's waves, it's gonna keep it grounded. So if we can just kind of think of some affirmations or some powerful self-talk that we're going to remind ourselves how we want to show up and why we are worthy. If we do that sequence, negative thoughts can't come in. So we can really only think about, kind of one word or one thought at a time. So if we let our brain kind of just does what it wants to, it's going to go negative. So at least having some structure. And the statements I say to myself is, I am authentic, I am present, I am courageous.
That's what grounds you, right? That's what is that anchor statement that says, hey, no matter what happens, if situation with your wife, with your kids, with, whoever it may be, it's like, hey, at the end of the day, I'm authentic, right? You said you're courageous, right? I'm going to do hard things, but then I'm here. I'm not trying to avoid it, and I'm trying to get away from it. And that's, if somebody says, hey, who is Collin? They're like, well, he's authentic, he's courageous, and he's always present. Those are things that probably really values, right?
Well, yeah. And one of the drills we do is to come up with what I call your truth triangle, and your truths are in the middle. What traits? So think of triangle, delta, and there's 3 sides of triangle. Which means change. So the inside is what internal emotions do you want to express and feel in that moment? What's important to you? How do you want people to say, this is Collin, this is what he's known for, this is what I think of him, or this is how really the traits as a leader, as a father, as a husband, I want to emulate, and I want to really model being authentic, being myself. I want to train. I'm fully engaged in the moment. I see you, man. That's a sick black tee, looking pretty fit. I like your headphones. Just giving that the verbal, the visual, presence. I'm really into this. And then, what is not taught in schools and business is how to deal with fear.
Mm. Yeah.
No one teaches us how to manage fear. In the history of telling somebody to calm down, no one's ever calmed down.
It doesn't work.
So no. So to me, I really put a lot of weight and importance on courage and just how do we manage fear, self-doubt, adversity, challenge, change. So one of the things that if I'm coaching anybody, we spend a whole section on training courage and just understanding what fear is. Fear is a physical response to a mental threat. There's real fear and there's fake fear. Danger and fear are two different things. So, but then the outside of the triangle, this true triangle, are my values. So in my core values, Tyler, I talk about being a G. My goal in life is to be a G. Gratitude, giving, growing every single day. So that also helps quiet the noise. If you kind of have a self-talk game plan, if you have your personal philosophy on how you want to show up and what values that you like, that you want to show and emulate. So if you are in any environment, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be myself. So in sports, we like to say they play to beat us, we play to be us. Mm-hmm. So it's us versus us, man. We actually need them. Like, they're not our opponent, they're our partner. We need them to create greatness within us. We want their best to bring out our best. So we're not playing to be the best, we're playing to be our best. So I think these are just some things, just some simple little things that are you willing to kind of dig deep and go from within, So as a mindset coach, I'm just like a strength coach, but when you go to the gym to do pull-ups, push-ups, and core, like you're working on your physical muscles with different lifts. As a mindset coach, I do different mental, emotional lifts to gain clarity on how you want to show up, and then we're going to rep these over and over again.
Well, and I think what is impactful from a leadership perspective is, it's often said, the hardest person to lead is yourself. And so you got to do all the work to be able to lead yourself. And as you've mentioned a little bit, stuff that you're learning when you talked about, the four, dimensions, the words, the pictures, emotions, and beliefs, that stuff that you're really going through now, to me as a leader, it magnifies what you learn when you're sharing with others. So if you're working on your mindset and you're saying, hey, let's all collectively work on our mindset. I'm working on this. How can we help others work on this? Then it becomes cultural, right?
I agree. Yeah. The goal is to make mindset and wellness and personal growth normal. To make it normal. The phrasing we say is you don't need to be sick to get better. So I like to throw out words like prehab.
Yeah.
So you have the weight room and you have the training room. So I love counseling, I love therapy, but most people think of, if I'm going through something heavy, I need to speak to that type of a person.
Sure.
Where like and I'm a college athlete, when you got your knee sprained, you'd see this trainer who's going to rehab it and make it better. That's completely normal. So I think we should make therapy and counseling normal. But just like in football and baseball that I played at Washington State, we had strength coaches to get us ready to play, to get us, more explosive, more stronger, that type of stuff. So I think a mental performance coach, which most pro teams have this type of a specialist, it's a different skill set. So we're going to work on prehab and proactively talking about the power of self-image, to how to create poise and how to respond to adversity, challenge, change, this process over outcome, goal setting, using imagery to visualize things that you want, be unselfish, these core values as a team. Let's proactively work through these things so we're not waiting till there's this problem.
One of the things that I guess I'm trying to do with this podcast and with the community developing is realizing, we're about the same age where we're at this transition point to where it used to be, if you go back to the old style of leadership and sales and the Jack Welch and this just put your head down and push and go. And, how many calls can you make a day? And it's really, it's fake it till you make it. It's everything else, as opposed to, no, it's raise your arm up and say, hey, I'm scared. I don't know. I have, insecurities. I have vulnerabilities, and being able to actually be more empathetic yields greater results. Is that something that you truly believe? And the catalyst to that is really bringing in this idea of, hey, let's condition our mindset as opposed to just, fake it until we build, false confidence.
Well, to me, you look at the word leadership, it comes down to one word, influence, and then influence comes down to one word, which is value. And value is all wrapped around this beautiful package of empathy. Like, empathy is the most powerful skill in leadership. And it's thrown out a lot. I'm not the only one that says empathy is powerful, but it truly is. And I look at sales professionals, a lot of them just talk about themselves and about their company, where have you done the work to understand the market, but are you asking the questions to understand the customer and really get in their shoes and really solve problems? So in a marriage, in a friendship, I mean, bro, it's not about you. I mean, we have 2 ears, 1 mouth. So let's seek to understand. Let's really care. And I think that the best strategy in sales is to love and serve people. That really is like the number one thing. But what's awesome about brain science, if you're looking at your health mentally, when you help people, Tyler, your brain produces oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. These are powerful chemicals. So, and it's all with the heart expecting nothing in return. And having this patience, I want to win this relationship, not this deal, or like, oh, I closed them so hard. No one wants to be closed.
No.
Like, did you help them? Did you, solve a problem? Did you build this connection? Like, do you really know everyone's name in that account? Are you, thinking about them? And it's deeper than just, I want to close this sale. So I think people can read bullshit a mile away now. There's so many, no one wants to be sold, man. So if you can make it fun, and like, I'm building connections today. So one of my, my 2 core values when I used to be in sales is I want to bring value and make things easy. If I can really bring you the most value out of any other person that walks in here, like, that's awesome for everybody. And then the second thing is, if it is complex, people will not trust you. They will not execute what you're doing. So if we can just simplify the process, go the extra mile, talk it in like a first grade term, remove all the barriers so they can go from step A to B and simplify it for them, dude, that's awesome. And that's just doing the right thing. Simple
gets repeated.
It's true.
It's funny as there's almost this like wry smile as I'm listening to you. And again, we're just meeting each other. We have a random couple friends, and yet as I'm going through this, it's almost like we ran 2 parallel experiences to come to the same answer. It is for me dealing with a lot of insecurity over time and realizing, how can I, get rid of that? Just be more empathetic. If people talk about, I mentioned this to a friend, yesterday, day before, we were talking about network marketing and how so many people to network, they just want to go pitch and pitch and pitch. And I'm like, no, gross. Oh, who wants that? Mm-hmm. Go connect with people. Go get to know people. Go learn about them. My wife, has the saying of, I want to know the color of your carpet. That's when you start to connect with people and build relationships. And I have no problem in business. And even for, podcasts, what I'm doing, it's like, hey, if this isn't a value for you, great. How can I find the person that is? Because I know if I connect enough people, if I serve, if I do that, it'll come back around.
Well, yeah. And I'll add this point to it. And this is, if we have any salespeople, I call this effluence. So it's influence in this new e-economy where it's virtual, it's all this stuff. So the first one, you might guessed it, it's empathy. So it's like really thinking about like, what are you thinking? What are some of your needs? Then the second E is to engage. Like if you're presenting, speaking, ask questions, make it a dialogue, not this like monologue stage on stage where you just show up and throw up and just like talk at. I was like, don't be a tennis ball machine.
No.
Let's volley. Yeah. Let's have some things to hit back and forth. And I think that the third thing, especially with the advent, people can't see this, but I'm showing Tyler my cell phone. With the advent of, TikTok and stories on Instagram, the third one is to entertain. So if you think you can just show up and start like talking about your product, like no one cares. So different is better than better. Be creative, use props, tell stories. Be different, find what quirks within you. I used to bring in props when I used to sell. I used to just try to make it a game, make it fun. And a way to entertain also too is if you can get vulnerable too, if you can tell an impactful story. And then the fourth E is then you can educate. The biggest mistake is you try to open up, try to educate it. Well, you haven't earned the right yet. You haven't established trust, the rapport. I'm on to my next thing. You're not asking questions like, why are you here? Like, doesn't concern me. I have a million other things to do. And then I think the fifth one, which is super simple, is to empower. Give them the tools to take the next step. Give them the tools that if you have to convince somebody, that's bad.
Yeah.
No one should convince anybody.
No. It doesn't work. It doesn't last.
No, but if they like, wow, okay, empathy, like you're talking my language. You understand my needs and my challenges. Engaging, like you really, like I feel connected and I really trust you, or at least selling is trust. And then, dude, that was funny what you did. Like that thing or that story you told, like that's impactful. And then I actually learned something. You actually taught me something that I can use, you know? And then you gave me a simple, you know, when, why, and how. This is how you take the next step. This is pretty simple, and I actually feel cool about it. This is win-win for everybody.
I'm just trying to pull this up, and I saw this the other day, and I'm not prepared, and I'm sorry for that, but it was about this idea of empathy. And I want to tie it together because I believe people do not understand what empathy is. I have that belief, and yet I saw this, and Brene Brown to me has a great definition of empathy, but this came from Donald Miller. And he goes, the best definition I've heard of empathy is shared pain. Sharing somebody's pain is hard to do from a distance. We have to get close to have empathy. And so as you're talking about, it's like, you know, I got to get close to you to appreciate what you're going through, to find out if we can go somewhere together. If I'm not willing to get close to you and really understand you, then it's always this like, there's just not much authenticity there. There's not much connection to where I don't care if you're selling someone a product, you're leading them, you're just in a social relationship with someone. If this barrier, whatever that barrier is, what if it's coming back to you've shared this, and I've heard this on other podcasts, sharing about stuttering. Well, there's a vulnerability there that if you were to have a stutter, no one cares, but yet you're vulnerable enough, which I'm guessing once you're vulnerable enough with, you're no longer thinking about. And so then it just moves on. And so that's not only a powerful tool. And to me, that comes back to where we've long passed, I think, in society, you know, this idea of judgment. It's like, hey, we're all going through something. And the sooner we just say, hey, this is what I'm going through, it's easier on us, but it's also easier for others to want to walk with us.
I agree. And it's like you're human. Like we all bleed, we all hurt, we've all been through trauma, whether it's capital T trauma or, you know, not that big, we've been through something.
Yeah.
But I think it's this lie that we think other people are like obsessing over what we're doing. I saw a post on Instagram the other day where it had this circle that was like all filled in, and like this is us thinking about other people thinking about us. And then there's like the other picture was like this one little dot, like this tiny little pebble, the amount of time people are actually thinking about us.
Yeah.
You know, so we get so caught up in obsessing over us. And it's the phrasing, you know, it's, you're not who you think you aren't who others think you are what you think other people think you are. And it's usually not even true.
You know? Well, you mentioned that, you know, before, and I think it's important is people aren't thinking about you near as much as what you think. So whatever you think they're thinking, quite honestly, they're not thinking. They're thinking about themselves and whatever else. So just, you know, it comes back to don't make that up. Just be, I think to me, there's a part of being authentic and just ask, hey, you know, what are you thinking? Let's communicate and use that process to communicate.
I'll add this. And if you're in like a new meeting or you're you know, in a group environment and we have to like introduce yourself, or you have to like sell something or present something, I always think of these kind of three things to think about. Like, hey, what's my intent for this interaction? Like have clear intent. Let's not wing. Let's have like a clear plan. Number two is like, what's something I really want to learn, like sincerely learn about this group or about this person or about, you know, the mission of, you know, whoever I'm speaking with or what issues they have. And I think the third thing is like, what's one thing I can bring of value? Let's have like, we can be flexible, but like, how am I going to make their day better, make their job easier, you know? And I think the other part of this is just removing your worth tied to the outcome.
I think just that's the biggest lesson people can learn, period.
Yeah. Just removing, like, who says that if they like you or don't, if you get the next meeting or if they buy from you or they don't, means you're a good or bad person. You can't control the outcome or the result. I say focus on the root, not the fruit. That's from John Gordon, by the way. I know you like John Gordon.
Yeah.
But the root is like your behaviors, your habits, you know, your game plan, you know, your strategy, your process, being curious. I think curiosity is another thing that we could do a lot better job of. When things get hard, get curious. When you're up against a challenge, get curious. You want to make more friends? Get curious. You want more influence? Get curious. To use this word,
I don't think you can be empathetic without being curious. Mm-hmm. If you desire to learn and get to know and just like, help me understand, that is going through that process of wanting to use Donald Miller, sharing that pain. You can't be empathetic. And if you're not in that case curious about someone else, then it's about you. And people are going to pick up on that real quick.
And Tyler, I'll add this. One of the biggest struggles to execute what we're talking about is having compassion for yourself and forgiving yourself. And if you have imposter syndrome or if you're a narcissist, that's brother and sister. They're very closely linked. If you can just forgive yourself and love yourself, one of my new mantras is I love what I have.
Okay.
And not from a narcissist perspective, but like, I don't need to prove anything. I'm grateful for what I have. I'm going to optimize what I have. And there's kind of two mindsets. You got this prove mindset and this improve mindset. And the old me was, I'm just trying to prove that I'm the best player, or that I'm, popular, or I'm smart, or
prove your worth.
I have this. Yeah. Like it was this daily game of like this balances and like checks of, having to get that validation verbally, having to see an outcome to believe. Where if you have an improved mindset, you mentioned Carol Dweck at Stanford having this growth mindset. This improved mindset it's connection, not perfection, progress, not perfection. And I have everyone I train master these 5 words. I'm not defined by this. I'm not defined by this. Who says you're defined by this? Even success or failure, it doesn't define you, but are you getting better? So think about, athletes, parents, if you have athletes, or if you're in band, music, choir, debate, chess team. If you go into that performance trying to prove yourself, you're not present, you're thinking about the future, you are tying your worth, it's a have to, it's not a get to. And that's where some parents and coaches they're great at practice, but they can't play in games. It's because they're tying worth to this performance instead of, just like, I know you have a background in yoga or fitness, kind of a little bit.
Yeah. Not so much yoga, fitness.
I looked you up on LinkedIn. I wrote a bunch of notes down, but it's like, it's a yoga practice.
Yeah.
So I am a human being choosing to ride horses. I'm a human being choosing to play tennis. I'm a human being choosing to make music. I'm a human being choosing to write books.
Yeah.
It doesn't define me. But every time I have an opportunity to perform, it's a chance to get better.
Yeah. It's choose to, this is an adage that I have, and I'll share it with you, is my desire is to be better today than I was yesterday, with the intention to do whatever I can today to learn to be better tomorrow. So today's ceiling is tomorrow's floor. And, learned that from a mentor, but it's something that if I stop and focus on that, then I'm not worried about where I'm going to be 6 months from now. I'm not comparing myself to others. Just like in a small step as I make forward today, did I move forward? Did I do things to help me learn to be better today? If nothing else happened, if all I did was woke up in the morning, read my devotionals, read the things that I read to contemplate on that to be better, I'm already better than I was yesterday because I took something else new in. That's just something I try to hold on to. And instead of getting in this, competition with others, it's just like, hey, play my game.
Yeah, it's exhausting. But also, I think another thing we don't talk enough about with our young people, even like business people, is to play to your strengths. Like, why would you try to be like somebody else?
Yeah,
the phrasing I like to say is, be the next you. Like, everyone's already taken, you should be the next you.
Yep.
Like, there's only one you. So, like, if you can stand out for the right reasons, that's your best sales strategy. If 100%. You can be different, that's your best sales strategy. If you can sound different, talk different, look different, like the brain has this focus on like pattern, I don't pay attention. If we break the pattern, I'm gonna pay attention. So if you can do that in a positive way, that brings value, that brings humor, that solves problems, that's creative. I love creativity. Creativity is one of my favorite things. Making art, making products, selling something, like I love creativity. So, and part of it, if I'm working with salespeople, I was like, let's gamify this thing. Let's just gamify it. This isn't real life. This is a game. So let's look at some rules, like how many calls or how many follow-ups, or how can we get crazy, in a fun way, in a positive way. And having empathy, think about them, man. They're busy. They don't plan to see you today. They don't plan to buy from you today. So let's like gamify it and just make it fun. I
have a hard time with creativity. because I'm not what I would consider a classic creative person. You know, dude, if I were to sketch and draw, it'd look like a hot mess, just bad. But I heard this the other day and I embrace it. You give me some box, you know, you have a whiteboard behind you, give me a box. All right. And you tell me, hey, figure out every single way we can solve this problem outside of that box. Dude, I'm game on. That is a puzzle. That's fun to me. And as I heard this taught, that's creativity. I'm like, I'm all about that. And so to your point, kind of this gamification, say, hey, here are the conditions of it. Here's the rules that you know it. Figure out all the ways outside of it. That becomes a creative point to solve a problem. I just thought I'd share that with you.
That's really good. Yes, but it's kind of like, do not be a cover band, be the next you, man.
Yeah.
Like that's just, you know, let's try to, you know, formulate, you know, what makes me unique, different. But you know, strengths isn't only what you're good at; it's also what you love to do. So tie in your quirks with your messaging, with your stories, with how you can take complex things and make them simple based off of who you are. And I think that shows other people, wow, this person's authentic. Like this isn't kind of normal. This is kind of different. I like that.
Be you.
100%.
Yeah.
But do people know who they are, Todd? That's kind of the question.
Well,
have they done the work?
That's where it comes to that process of, you know, it's first, hey, do the work to find out who you are and be okay with that. You know, what problem do you solve? What purpose do you have? You know, finding your grounding as opposed to so often I think people are so lost because they're trying to be, you know, the next sports athlete. They're trying to be the next Tom Brady. You know, every kid wants to be that. And there's like, so they're trying to emulate that, but then they get lost not being themselves. They're trying to be the next great, you know, sales performer. They're trying to be the next great whatever. It's like, okay, understand that and get back to what you said is, what are your unique strengths? What are your uniqueness? What story, what situations have you been through? You're unique and different because of what you've gone through by being a two-sport athlete, to having, you know, the stuttering, to dealing with the mindset, to say, hey, I've overcome, I've studied this. Now all of a sudden I can go help people and be uniquely you. And I think that's the challenge of every person and leaders to say, hey, don't worry about it. Don't fall under the shame because you're not someone else. And I think that's what happens is, you know, you mentioned about youth sports is as parents, like, oh, you're not as good as Johnny. He's left-handed. He's 6 foot tall. I'm right-handed, 5 foot. I'm not going to be like Johnny. I got to do what only I can do. And that should be good enough to help me, you know, or figure out. I coached sports for a handful of years. And I, you know, coached mostly soccer, and I loved it because I grew up playing soccer. But I understood the strategy of it. And I hated when other coaches would go into situations. They're like, okay, you know, Morgan, you're going to go play, striker. And the kid was really good at defense and he was right footed, and they go put him left striker. I'm like, why would you do that to a kid? Don't, set him up to fail. Now, if it's one thing, you're in a situation, you want to challenge him, you want to help him grow, and you do that, great. But set him up to succeed. Look at his unique strengths and abilities and his temperament and set him up to succeed, and just see how much everyone on the team has more fun, because they do. And so I always looked at it that way, and I didn't understand why people didn't do that. Now, if we were saying, hey, we need to develop our skills so we become a more valuable player. If, you're baseball and you're just like, hey, you know what? You learn how to switch hit. You're going to be a more valuable player. If you have that innate talent, then do it. Then that's great. And not taking that away, but it's like set people up to succeed. And then at the same point, don't chastise them when they fail. Say, hey, nice try. Good effort. Way to try something new. I saw this a couple of weeks ago. I'll share it again. I think I shared this when I was talking to Mike Nielsen. I was at a basketball tournament with my son, and there was this basketball coach, really, really experienced, Don Ridnour, Luke's dad, and he was talking about his grandson, and he goes to make this shot, and it's just kind of wildly out of balance. He goes, hey, that's all right. Good try. You tried something new. You tried something different. As I was sitting next to him, and it's like, we need to embrace that in all parts of society. I need to say, hey, Collin, dude, I see what you drew behind you. No, that's awesome. Good effort. Try it. The book, Think Again, Adam Grant, he talks about how a teacher does that with kids that are artists. There's people that'll say, and I think, if you're right-handed, draw left-handed, because it's going to challenge. And it's like, oh, that looks like crap. I'm right-handed and I drew left-handed, but you had tried something new to expand your abilities to say, hey, I can grow there, but yet not to condemn someone because they didn't meet some expectation.
Well, and there's two parts to that. Number one is, we're afraid to fail. We're afraid how we're going to look, what people are going to think. And then number two is parents are getting their worth tied to what their kids do.
Totally.
So it's kind of like, mom and dad, what's more important? Your relationship with your kid or them being good at some random sport that they probably won't play in like 2 or 3 years?
If I were to tie something to my worth as a parent, to my kids, it is one, can they be a great teammate? Can they encourage their team members? Can they make sure that people are having a good experience? And number two, are they giving it great effort? If they don't do those two things, then I got a problem. If they do those two things, dude, I don't care what you score. I don't care. And it really, it's like
the model of yelling at the kid or the coach or the referee, like that model doesn't work. So Mike Trout, the highest paid player in baseball, they asked his dad and mom, what'd you do to help him get to the major leagues and have the success? He went 0 for 5, 5 for 5. We didn't care. Was he a great teammate? How was his effort? Just exactly what you said. But this is what I'll say. I actually wrote a book for parents on this very topic. And because when I would work with kids in small groups and one-on-one, one of the first questions was fear, like understanding like what, do you know what fear is? Your heart rate elevates, you feel nervous, palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. Like it's this physical state change and your brain starts going crazy. What are you thinking about? Like, what is causing that fear? Like, what are you worried about? Really, like you're 13, you're 12 or you're 15. Like, what are you worried about? And by far, the number one response was having to talk to my parents after the game, having to defend myself or the car ride home after the game. And what I think parents don't realize is when they're critiquing and judging and talking about that, man, the kids are remembering these things and they're now performing not to fail. And they associate this sport with like shame instead of like, this is a game. This is a game.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who invented baseball and basketball and soccer didn't say, I'm going to create a sport that causes anxiety and breaks apart families.
No.
No. So the question I ask parents is, what do you think your kid would say when they're asked that question and they knew that you were not in the room and that you wouldn't know? And the other question is how many coaches parents have your kids had? Probably say 10, 50, 100. Well, parents, how many coaches have you had to be a better parent for your child? You want your kid to be coachable. Are you coachable?
Well, and I think it comes back to this idea of leadership. It doesn't matter if you're leading people in a sales force, in an office, or your kids. It's all the same principles. As we lead our kids should be the exact same way that we work with coworkers, or if we're leading a team should be exactly the same way. Are they so anxious to come and tell us that they failed? Oh, I didn't get that sale. Oh, I screwed that up. I actually undersold it, whatever. Is there so much fear as opposed to, okay, great, we can learn from that. No problem. I had a friend share, he worked for Chick-fil-A, and he was the guy that came up with the cows, parachuting down onto the field. And he tells this story about how when UVA, Virginia, was playing Georgia, and Georgia was just getting obliterated. UVA was up in the first half, and so everyone throws the cows out on the field. And he's in the press box, and he's there with the head of marketing. He's like, I'm fired. I'm done. I'm canned. And the guy looks at him and goes, all right, well, we'll work with this. So then the next year, what do? They put parachutes on all the cows. They parachute in all the cows. And they took that experience, and that's just a cultural response to say, it's okay. We'll make the most of this, as opposed to you're canned, and then what happens to everyone else? No one else is willing to try anything because that guy got canned.
Well, I would say that advertising worked.
Yeah.
Because it triggered a response from after seeing something.
Totally did. Collin, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that was fun. And we're just